Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 6th episode of our podcast, MusicaliTea, a show where we dive into the lives of composers. I'm your host, Joycelyn.
And I'm Sarah.
And today we will be discussing the life and work of Hector Berlioz and how he was actually kind of insane.
Sorry, I was laughing because it says Hector and Berlioz.
I don't know why it says that. Also, this is a side note. Every time I read Hector Berlioz, all I could think of is like from Troy when Achilles is like, Hector! You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Hector! And then Hector's just looking from the wall like, I gotta go fight this man and die.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, sorry, I had to get that out of my system.
This podcast contains mature themes, including thoughts of suicide. It is crucial to approach this content with an open mind, respect for boundaries, and an understanding of consent. Thank you for your understanding, and we hope that you find value, education, and respectful insights within the episodes of this podcast.
Also, I don't know how to the name Berlioz.
I say Berlioz.
Berlioz.
Mm.
Right? Berlioz?
Berlioz. Well, because he was French.
Berlioz. It's just the French language hates me. Like it don't.
Berlioz.
Won't. Berlioz.
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 Hector.
Berlioz. Hector.
We can be on a first name basis with him.
I'm gonna call him Hector because I can't.
Basically, quick bio. Hector Berlioz was a French composer. His dad was a doctor, and that bled greatly into his life.
Come on, pun.
I know. I was actually kind of proud of that. But he did grow up loving music, and he became more attached to the arts as he grew up, especially by the time he was 18. But his dad was this highly renowned doctor in the French Alps and wanted his son Hector to follow in his footsteps. And so he was like, okay, fine, Dad, it's your dream, but I'll do it. And so he goes to medical school and he gets super freaked out when he sees corpses.
And honestly, very valid. That's a valid.
Honestly, I would have freaked out too. I'm so squeamish. But anyway, he goes, even though he's super passionate about the arts, he goes to medical school, and then he goes to the one anatomy class where he got really grossed out. And this is a quote from one of his memoirs, because he's one of those composers who did document quite a bit about his own internal thoughts and feelings, which, cool story, bro. But anyway, yeah. He says, when I entered that fearful human charnel house littered with fragments of limbs and saw the ghastly faces and cloven heads, the bloody cesspool in which we stood with its reeking atmosphere, the swarms of sparrows fighting for scraps, and the rats in the corners gnawing bleeding vertebrae, such a feeling of horror possessed me that I leapt out of the window and fled home as though death and all his hideous crew were at my heels. It was 24 hours before I recovered from the shock of this first impression, utterly refusing to hear that words, anatomy, dissection, or medicine, and firmly resolved to die rather than enter the career which had been forced upon me. That's a little dramatic. I don't know.
Really nasty though. Also.
I feel because I don't know what the practices were at the time. That's another thing too. Because reading this, I'm like, was he exaggerating a little bit, or was it
this was the 1800s?
That's what I was like. I mean, I've seen Sleepy Hollow, and so I believe it.
I believe it too. I'm kind of with Hector on this one. I can't do it.
I couldn't be a doctor. I couldn't even get through the first episode of Grey's Anatomy, so there's no way I could be a doctor.
Also, it's just chronically sad. I can't be around that. But thank you to those who can, because that is not me.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. So yeah, I guess he decided. I guess this is definitely what happened. Yeah, so he decided, I'm not going to do this mess anymore. But while he was in medical school, Hector would use some of his little pocket money for artistic avenues in Paris, going to concerts and theater performances. He really used the arts as an escape from all that disgusting nonsense that he was surrounded by in medical school.
Well, and then funny enough, although he couldn't speak English, he would attend these Shakespeare plays and Shakespeare productions that were put on. And he most notably became enamored with the Irish actress named Harriet Smithson after seeing her perform as Ophelia in a production of Hamlet. Fell so in love with her, he went and got an apartment near hers, but then she didn't even know that he like existed.
Very valid. Man, okay.
He got the apartment so that he could like observe her like in her daily life, and then he wrote letters and like sent flowers to her. Did not know he was alive.
I don't even know how to like respond to that.
I don't think you can. You know, it's just like
sent her flowers, but she still didn't know he existed.
It was like
I kind of feel bad.
I don't know. It's a little creepy.
I think she was purposely ignoring that man. I think she knew he existed, but he was a little weird. Like, y'all seen what Hector looked like? Like, you know, I feel like I would ignore him too, probably. Actually, what does he look like? I don't know.
I was about to say maybe you need to Google him. Not you simping over Berlioz.
I'm not. Yeah, girl. I'm sorry, but I definitely would not have looked. Oh no. He had the most extreme of Cupid bows.
Wait, what? Let me look. Hold up.
Do you want me to share my screen with you?
No, I mean, I literally made the thumbnail. I didn't even notice his Cupid's bow.
It's like very indented. Like that man could not play the flute.
I was about to say he would have had a hard time.
Yeah. He kind of looks like George Washington.
Wait, hold on. I remember what did
he actually doesn't, but he kind of
No, because I read when he first started learning music, he did play the flute and the bassoon.
How?
That's what I was about to say. I just remembered that because I didn't even think about the Cupid's bow, and then I was like,
he does have no lips also, so maybe like he had an indentation, but he also had no top lip. So
he also looks so sad in like every single picture.
It's because what's her face was ignoring him.
Harriet. Are you looking at the one where he's like?
Yes, Harriet and
that
Harry
one
would be kind of cute together. Or no, his name is Hector.
Harry Berlioz.
Harriet and Hector. That's kind of cute though.
That is kind of cute.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so we're like shipping them now, but
okay. So he wrote this quote about Harriet. I come now to the supreme drama of my life. An English company had come over to Paris to give a season of Shakespeare at the Odeon.
I think Odeon's fine.
Odeon, whatever. Okay. I was at the first night of Hamlet. In the role of Ophelia, I saw Harriet Smithson. The impression made on my heart and mind by her extraordinary talent, nay, her dramatic genius, was equal only by the havoc wrought in me by the poet she so nobly interpreted. That is all I can say.
If they wanted to, they would, you know.
Honestly, I understand like going to a performance and like seeing somebody perform and getting caught up.
Because you at the Renaissance Fair, you're like, the prince, he was just looking at me.
Yeah, like, the Spaniard.
He was.
That's my man.
He was looking at you though.
He definitely looked at me though.
When he rode by on that white horse, I was like,
he looked dead at me.
Okay. I saw it. Slow motion.
Thank you. Corroborate my story.
Yes, it did. It did happen.
So I understand getting caught up in the moment when someone's like performing and acting, even in like orchestra or like band or something, you know, because there's like specific instruments. If you play really well, I'm like,
it's the pitch black too.
Also the pitch black, something about that.
No, but after reading this quote, I looked up Harriet Smith. What's her last name?
Smithson.
I looked her up because I was like, you know, sometimes these quotes kind of exaggerate. You know, they talk about how beautiful they were, and those portraits are always exaggerated. Like they're supposed to like make them look better than they really were.
Yeah.
like they did that with like the English monarch. Those
Right.
people did not look like that. But I look at these portraits of her and I'm like, okay, yeah.
Now I gotta see what she looked like. I don't know what she
No,
looks
because she like I'm like, is she really? And then I like look her up. I was like,
like. Let me
okay.
see.
Like
Let me see.
the episode where, well, the Debussy episode, I Googled every single one of those women. I was like, are they really?
Mm.
Are they really?
Honestly, girl, I can't tell. I'm just gonna have to see her in real life because,
I don't think you want to see her in real life now.
well, no, she's probably
You'll
like
have you're gonna
a
have a
bag of
barely
bones,
overreaction
but
to that.
like, I'll have to go back in time and see what she looked like to determine whether or not it was good.
This episode has like no structure, but
It actually does not. Well,
I
you
kind
gotta
of like it though. I'm following our train of thought right now.
okay.
Anyway, he was so in love
Mhm.
with her. He arranged for the premiere performance of Symphonie fantastique, which was going to be on December 5th, 1830, to celebrate Harriet's return to Paris, and she didn't show up.
I feel kind of bad, but that's hilarious.
Well, especially okay,
I mean,
because
because she didn't even know he existed, right? Like, I don't understand.
it was like he was like planning for her to be there, and and the piece is inspired by her. That's a big thing. It's like the piece is inspired by her, and like listening to it, we'll get to like the actual piece later, but just re-listening to it, I'm like, it really is a masterpiece of a work. There are some like really beautiful moments in there, and I'm like, yeah, if I wrote something like that, and he was 26 when he wrote Symphonie fantastique.
Yeah.
So his prefrontal lobe just finished developing, and
I wish she gave Hector a chance. He seemed actually emphasis on seemed because we're going to talk more about it later, but he seemed like a nice guy.
She eventually gave him a chance, but
yeah,
look what it took to get there.
Right, like a whole symphony.
Okay, so like Berlioz had a bit of a Troy Bolton moment because not because he was like playing basketball or anything. It was like he was following his dad's dream because Troy's dad wanted him to like be a big basketball player, and Hector's dad wanted him to be a doctor. And so it was like he had to follow his own dream. Except he didn't end up going into the medical field because Troy like still played basketball. But you get like the analogy I'm making. They had that moment of like, it's your dream, Dad, not mine.
He was able to break free. We're soaring,
flying.
There's not
a star in heaven we can't reach.
If we're trying.
I listened to that song recently too, though.
I went back and watched the first High School Musical, and I mean, I'm never going to say anything bad about it, but let's just say it wasn't how I remembered it being.
My favorite part is when Gabrielle is hiding in the bathroom and Sharpay walks by and doesn't even see her. You know the moment I'm talking about? Because Gabrielle is like, right, she's behind the wall, and then Sharpay like walks in, and she's like all mad about something. She turns around where Gabriella would be in her line of sight, and she walks right by, and I'm like,
my favorite is just like when Gabriella's like telling off Sharpay, and she's like, "You don't know anything, Sharpay." Like, Gabriella, shut up. Like, I'm sorry, you are the villain here. Like, right? 100% Team Sharpay. By any means necessary.
Actually, yeah. I rewatched the movie like a few months ago, and I was like, why am I kind of Team Sharpay? Because
Gabriella's not the villain. Miss Darby is the villain. But yeah, I'm Team Sharpay.
Which movie is it that Troy gives her the necklace? It's like the T necklace, and she goes, T like for Troy.
I'm pretty sure that's the first movie.
Is that the first one?
Is it? I don't know. All I'm gonna say is they continue to disrespect Sharpay for the entire series, and a part of me is like, Sharpay, listen, bestie, these not your friends. It's not your friends.
They're not.
You got all day behind summer jobs at a country club.
I know. Oh my gosh.
And this is how they treat you. You know
Like
your
you're
worth, honey. Get you some rich friends and leave
exactly,
these people behind.
exactly.
You
Just
have enough
you
talent to do like Juilliard pre-college or something. You don't
right.
even need this school musical, okay?
And then after all of that, Gabriella's like, I want to be a lawyer.
I want to go my own way. What
What
about us?
about us?
What
What about
about
everything
everything
we've been
we've been through?
through?
What about trust? Like, Gabriella, where are you taught? I'm sorry. I can't. Can we
Okay.
please move on? I can't go into my High School Musical rant right now. Like, what is Gabriella even talking about?
Um, I don't even know what's happening anymore. So basically, long story short, I almost said Bechter. Berlioz had to go his own way.
Yes.
Even when that meant that the love of his life didn't even show up to his little jam session. So he falls in love. He ended up falling in love with Marie Felicity Denise Mock, a 19-year-old pianist. Leave that right there. Disappointed. Disappointed, not surprised. But her mom even approved of the relationship.
That checks out. I
She
feel like that's on brand.
Her mom approved. And
For
then
the time period, I feel like that's on brand.
right, and it's I don't know. It's like it is an age gap.
It's
Honestly,
every on brand now.
every
Yeah. On
well,
brand now. Yeah.
and every episode we've had after this, it's like nothing surprises me after Debussy.
Yeah.
To me, that set the bar. And so it's like, okay, is this like okay.
what tier are we in?
What tier? So anyway, the plan was they were going to get married after Berlioz completed his 2-year studies in Italy. But he was like 3 weeks into Italy and then found out that she broke off the engagement to get with an older man named Camille Pleyel, who was the heir to the Pleyel Piano Company.
Valid.
I mean, Berlioz didn't play the piano.
You had to do what you had to do. You had to do what you had to do. It's not personal. It's just business. I kid.
That's great.
All right. But anyways, Berlioz got really upset about it and he went unsub mode.
But that was just how I labeled it.
Started to plan to kill them both.
Yeah, so he purchased poisons, pistols, and he even developed like a very elaborate disguise. But funny enough, he reached the city Nice, and on his way back, is it Nice? Looks like I think it's Nice, but it looks like Nice because then he was like, actually, never mind, and so he went back to Paris.
But you know what's so interesting about that little chunk tidbit, besides the fact he was gonna kill his fiancée or whatever, there was a Bailey Sarian episode about, I don't know if y'all know who she is. She's like murder mystery makeup, and I like watch her every single Monday. And there's this like French guy who he faked working at the World Health Organization, and like he started to not be able to like keep track of his lies because like he obviously didn't work there. He actually didn't even have a job at all, and he was like, yeah, it was like a whole bunch of lies he had. And when people started to find out about like these lies, like he couldn't keep them covered, he like killed his whole family. Yeah, so maybe that's like is that what the boys were talking about when they would go to the bar, you know, to be like, I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this situation. Maybe you should just get some poison and some pistols. Like
I wonder there's the fact that I mean it's like, you know that TikTok sound? It's like oh my god, how does it go? It's like about having 2 nickels. And it's like,
oh, it's like if I had a nickel for every time that happened, I'd have exactly 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, after he was like plotting to kill them, he was returning back from Paris, ended up going to Rome instead. And then by 1832, a mutual friend invited Harriet to a performance on Lelio, which was the sequel to Symphonie fantastique, where she realized the pieces were about her, and she contacted him and visited him.
Aww.
And then both their families were like super mad about it, but they got married anyway.
1833. Very cute, I guess. I think that was the year my college was founded. I'm gonna look it up.
I don't wait, when was Georgia College founded? Hold up.
Founded.
I think it was 1899.
Oh my gosh, it was 1833. Look at me. I should know that. I worked in the admissions office. I definitely should definitely know those things.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Yeah, so that's not actually the whole breakdown. That just goes to show like how stuff really gets watered down history-wise, especially when we're talking about a white man who other white men tend to like, okay? But this is what actually happened. So when Harriet was told that the symphony was about her, she agreed to meet him, and later she married him. And there are many stories about their marriage, including the one that Hector swallowed a lethal dose of opium in front of Smithson to convince her to marry him, replicating the imaginary story of his music. And then when she agreed, he took the antidote, which he already had prepared, probably using his experience in medical school. It's the coercion for me. Like, if you have to like threaten to kill yourself to get someone to marry you,
Right.
maybe you should find somebody else. That's just a thought. Just a thought. Anyways. All right, Sarah, do you want to talk about Symphonie fantastique now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we already talked a little bit about Symphonie fantastique, and essentially it was this. It's considered to be very autobiographical in terms of Berlioz's love life. It's inspired by his experience with unrequited love, and of course his experimentation with opium. He described Symphonie fantastique in 1830 as a piece, quote, about an artist who is madly in love with a woman who does not know he exists. Yeah, it's his tell-all. And in 5 movements, he uses the idée fixe, or the fixed idea, to talk about themes of love, passion, opium-related hallucinations, revenge, and death.
Lots going on there.
Yep.
And I actually have a quote from the musical invective about Symphonie fantastique. It says, "Of the Berlioz nonsense, it is difficult to speak with patience. It is bad in itself, false, frightful. The third movement has an ugly, I don't even know how to say that word, running through it. The fantastic symphony is a nightmare set to music. The third movement ends with what the program calls the sinking of the sun, a distant roll of thunder, solitude, silence. The thunder is well imitated, and the silence is delicious."
Delicious.
And that was from a New York newspaper in 1868.
Delicious. I will say, because I listened to the piece again because it had been like several years since I actually listened to it all the way through. Because even when I studied Symphonie fantastique, the one movement we focused a lot on was the 5th one, Dream of a Witch's Sabbath. And so we really didn't focus so much on like the other movements in terms of like the individually. It was more of like the progression, because like the piece starts out like very I'd say like sprightly. It has a lot more energy to it in terms of like a more positive tone. And then of course, as the piece goes on, you sort of descend into this madness, very much like he did.
Yeah, I like it. I will say, I kind of like it.
I mean, it's like it also set the tone for programmatic symphonies and just programmatic works in general, because after Berlioz, other composers, especially like Tchaikovsky, was influenced by things like that, and having some sort of musical themes that were tied to human emotions. Because when I listened to Scene in the Fields, that's the 3rd movement that was just referenced in the invective. So beautiful. I was like, I feel like I am in a field. And at the very end, of course, like the reference to thunder, and it's like you hear like low timpani, and it's just like, but it's like
a rumble.
Beautiful. It is delicious to me. It was I
think he was on some energy. I personally liked it. I think Hector kind of popped off on that one. I do.
I would say it's his masterwork. I think there are some disagreements about that because I've seen other works of his referenced to as like his masterworks. I would say that this one is definitely like his magnum opus because it really developed a lot of the things that we now see in symphonies. Like you referenced the stopping of the horns when we were talking about it.
Yeah, the beginning of the fourth movement. Yeah.
The stopping of horns, because that's a really common tool used now for like different timbral purposes, but then also like the heavy use of like the English horn and oboe. It's just
really set the tone for a lot of works to come after that too.
Yeah. I think it was definitely like influential for its time.
Yeah. I'm a fan. A+ over here, Hector. We love you.
10 out of 10.
Except for the like suicide.
I mean, like, threatening your girlfriend with opium. That's not good.
But the music is great.
But the music.
So the piece I talked about this week was Roman Carnival Overture. Honestly, I just love a good overture. Like typically my favorite piece by composers is just the overture because it's the perfect length, and there's a lot going on, and I just never kind of get tired of them. But this overture is based on themes taken from his unsuccessful opera Benvenuto Cellini, which was 1838. And the opening is like a fast Italian dance from Act 2. Wait, shoot. Let me back up. Bleh. The opening is a fast Italian dance. And then there's the love theme that's like Cellini, who's the main character from that opera's love theme. And the two are prominently featured melodies throughout this work. And the overture was premiered in Paris in 1844 with Berlioz actually conducting himself. And it pleased the crowd and they wanted to hear it again. And it's still very, very popular. And I got those notes from winrep.org, which we talked about before. But I also thought this was an interesting piece too, because one, is really popular, it's really well performed. But I also saw that Terrawinds, which is a community group in Atlanta, performed this piece in 2001 at Midwest. So I thought that was super cool too. And they had a program note from that, which it says, the overture is a standalone concert piece for symphony orchestra, but it's made up of material and themes from his first opera. The technically challenging and rarely performed Benvenuto Cellini, which I just said. The opera on which this overture is based was born of inspiration garnered from 2 years of study in Italy. This sojourn was a result of Berlioz winning the prestigious Prix de Rome, a French scholarship for students of the arts, including categories in painting, sculpture, architecture, engraving, and musical composition. The prize included a 5-year stipend and required the winner to spend 2 years studying in Italy. It is our good fortune that Berlioz took the lovely melodies of the opera and made a condensed version of sorts in the Le Carnaval Romain, else some very lovely melodies might be lost to obscurity. And I really do agree with that statement. Like, I don't know what the rest of the opera sounded like, but the stuff that he pulled out for Roman Carnival Overture are really, really great things. In summary, he was a little insane. That's like the gist of it. He did some really insane things.
It was a little strange.
But I don't know. I'm not as upset with him as I am with Debussy, which is not right, because he definitely thought about like killing his fiance and threatened to kill himself. And
like the more that we dive into the private lives of composers, it's like we started out so structured and like wanting to, I think, keep everything in a box, and very quickly we realized that we couldn't keep everything in a box, especially like Debussy. Debussy was like literally, I don't want to say the downfall, but it was like there was going to be no structure after that.
I think it was like, because that was the turning point that like shattered our reality,
Yeah.
My reality was shattered. So I think Berlioz, I felt like I can see him being like this, so it's not as shocking to me, but it's still shocking in the sense of like, why does nobody talk about these things? Like, if we're going to be programming these works with all these composers over and over and over again, don't you think the people deserve to know this? I think the people deserve to know,
Especially because Symphonie fantastique is so autobiographical. And it's like, on the surface, you're like, oh, it's about an artist who descends into madness because of unrequited love. It like literally happened.
Yeah, it's
That's
like a little more than that.
And like listening to the piece, because like if you didn't know that, you'd be like, oh, it just gets a little weird over the 5 movements. But when you know like the actual progression, you know like what Berlioz was like struggling with internally, it definitely changes the tone of the piece quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, anyways, we
yeah.
hope that you enjoy today's episode, rounding off spooky season. So who are we talking about next week, Sarah?
Flo P.
Flo P, my bestie, Florence Price,
Price.
and all of the things that she went through on her journey in life as a composer. So very excited to do that episode.
Mm-hmm. I've already got like adoration like stuck in my head.
I'm sorry, but y'all messed up adoration for me. I'm sorry to say that ruined adoration for me. That particular performance really pissed me off. And y'all were like, what is she talking about? But Sarah knows what I'm talking about, don't you? GSU people know what I'm talking about. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm really excited to talk about Florence Price and all of her music and stuff. So it's going to be really, really good. Good episode. It's going to be a good episode. All right. Well, we hope you guys have a good life until we see you next. So bye.
Go carve some pumpkins.
Carve some pumpkins, yes.